I have been clear to my counterpart in Israel, please take the win and make sure that we can work together to bring back peace in the region.
That's Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly with the message to Israel, take the win. What's that win she's talking about? Well, over the weekend, Iran attacking Israel with a bombardment of drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles over the course of Saturday and Sunday. But the vast majority of those missiles and drones were kept away at bay by Israel with some support from Jordan, by the way. Rahim Mohammed is a freelance writer based in Calgary. His latest is for the National Post, where he writes, this is the headline, Iran's attack on Israel was inevitable, and Justin Trudeau is on the wrong side of history. He's on the line. Rahim, welcome back.
Elias, thank you so much for having me. Credit to my my editor, Carson Jarema, for that headline. It was a banger. I think one of his better ones.
Totally, right? Because, when you write a piece, I know the writers aren't responsible for the headlines, but the headline writer is so responsible for the click, 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 which is so important nowadays. Okay, so
he nailed it. Yeah, it was perfect.
Certainly did. So, Rahim, first things first, we came back from break with the Foreign Affairs Minister. And I guess this comes into play with what you've written in the National Post. What's your reaction to what we heard from Melanie Joly?
So, I don't know what you would mean by a win in terms of Israel's Iron Dome defense system worked pretty much as it was designed to, which is wonderful. That the human damage from the attack was limited. I think there was one critical injury, no fatalities thus far that I've seen reported. I don't know how you'd call that a win, though. It was still a heavy attack on Israel that not only threatened a number of military sites, but also some important religious sites. I'm not sure if you've seen, but the Iron Dome the Golden Mosque in East Jerusalem came under heavy Iranian fire. Just because a crisis was averted, I don't think that would mean, to any logical person that Israel's won. I think Israel was attacked. It was fortunate, due one to planning and two to happenstance, that things ended up, we ended up with a better scenario than might have been the case, but I don't see where calling that the win would come into play.
Yeah, and of course that choice of language is so questionable. I know English isn't her first language, but it just sounds like the wrong thing to say after.
I don't think it was much smarter in French. I mean,
that's it.
You're someone who probably hears her in both languages on a regular basis, so I'm not sure. If it translates better in French, I would doubt it.
Yeah. No, of course, the point taken, because really the problem is the policy. That's the problem. It's the policy. It doesn't matter what language it's in. So I want to get to your piece here, right? And the notion that this attack was inevitable, because this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just this weekend. It's not October 7th. There are decisions over a decade that we have to look at when it comes to how Canada has dealt with the region. Why don't you tell our listeners more?
Sure. So Iran has been a player from the very start of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Iran is the principal financial backer and benefactor of not only Hamas, but entities like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and the Houthi movement in Yemen, which have inserted themselves into this conflict at various points from the very beginning. So Iran has always been a player in this conflict, and I think there was always a possibility from the very start of fighting that we would see some sort of direct confrontation between Israel and Iran. And I think it's very understandable that people in Canada, within the Trudeau government and beyond, they do feel a type of compassion and sympathy for the Palestinians who've been caught in the crossfire, particularly the women, children, civilians. But this has always been part of a broader regional, more complicated dynamic, which I fear, again, the Trudeau government, in being a fair-weather ally to Israel and being quite soft on Iran over the years, now finds itself on the wrong side of.
Explain that part of how the Trudeau government has been soft on Iran over the years. Tell me about the policy decisions. What has this government done when dealing with Iran since they've been in office?
Sure. So to me, the most egregious act against Canada was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is kind of like their international, armed contingent that's active outside of Iran. They, shot down a plane at the beginning of 2020, on which the majority of the people on board of that plane were either Canadian nationals or had some sort of relationship to Canada. I believe the body count was 56 Canadians aboard that plane, which is massive. That's a massive casualty count. For whatever reason, the Trudeau government has yet to put the IRGC on its list of known terrorist organizations, despite that organization directly murdering that many Canadians. And you've also seen a softness in terms of Trudeau was a major backer of the Obama era Iran nuclear deal, which sort of gave Iran a financial lifeline to continue to be a benefactor of these terrorist groups throughout the region. And in general, we just haven't seen as hard a line on Iran as would be justified by its activities, killing not only Canadians, but destabilizing the region.
We're with Rahim Mohammed, freelance writer based in Calgary. His latest for the National Post argues that Justin Trudeau is on the wrong side of history when looking at the Iran-Israel conflict. So, Rahim, I want to ask you about this because, this government, the Liberal government, they are known to pander to cultural communities. I mean, it's almost their raison d'etre. And on this one, every time I speak to someone that identifies either as an Iranian or a Persian, right? They are not a fan of the Iranian government. So this is what I don't grasp. Like, this could be such an issue to pander to that community in Canada that certainly doesn't seem to be a fan of the Iranian regime.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think you've seen Pierre Poilievre front and center at a lot of events with the Iranian community saying, hey, a conservative government is going to take a hard line on the Iranian regime. A conservative government is going to put the IRGC on our list of terrorist organizations. So we think of the Trudeau government in terms of how it engages with different ethnic communities and cultural communities across Canada. We think of it, I think, for the most part, through the lens of diaspora politics. I don't think it works when you look at how Trudeau is engaged with Iran. I think you could look at Trudeau as being more aligned with Barack Obama and being more aligned with that generation of Democrats, sort of thinking we can engage with Iran, we can use carrots and sticks to have Iran better integrate in the global community. And I think that has quite self-evidently been a failed strategy.
And just on the Obama era deal with Iran, the reason we're in the mess we're in today is because of that deal?
Absolutely. So, Iran is at the center of a multi-billion-dollar network, financing not only Hamas, but a number of different terrorist entities in the region. And I think part of why it has that lifeline was the financial activities it was able to resume under the auspices of that agreement. And I think that gave Iran some breathing room when really it was the time to put a boot on the proverbial throat and sort of maintain a stringent regime of sanctions. So Iran wasn't able to carry out this sort of patronage on the kind of scale that would have facilitated a attack like October the 7th. If you look at the amount of resources that were needed to pull off something like the October 7th attack, that doesn't happen unless Hamas has the support of foreign patrons like Iran. Iran historically has been one of the bigger ones.
Minority government situation in this country, and of course, there's a chance we could have an election this week, called this week,
sure,
depending on what happens with the budget. But let's say the most likely scenario, October 25 is the next time we have an election. Well, what do you think as this plays out? If Canada continues on its current foreign policy path, what do you think the country risks?
In terms of thinking about so we have a year and a half. I think a lot of that will depend on how the next few days and weeks play out. I think there will be some sort of response from Israel, whether it's a response attacking the interior of Iran. I think that's quite questionable. There's a good amount of distance between Israel and Iran, and I think that would be something that would be challenging for Israel to coordinate. I think we're more likely to see some sort of targeted strike against, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, potentially known Iranian sites in places like Syria. So I think a lot of that will depend on how this plays out. But I do, hope that there's a realization that, hey, it's not just the situation in Gaza. We're seeing a broader regional set of battle lines being drawn. And, Canada, I think, when you're on the side of countries like Iran and China and Russia, I think you really have to consider and, think critically about your path to foreign policy. And I hope that's something that not only, becomes a epiphany for the Trudeau government, but for Canadian voters.
Rahim, happy Federal Budget Day, and thank you for your time.
Likewise.
A man who always knows how to take the win, Rahim Mohammed, freelance writer out of Calgary. Latest piece in the National Post is titled, "Iran's Attack on Israel Was Inevitable. Trudeau is on the Wrong Side of History."